Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I'm Spencer Simpson.
And I'm Kelton Howell. We have got a lot of sweet new commanders from Final Fantasy. Actually, 169 of them to be exact, which feels a little overwhelming, to be honest.
I am blown away by that number. Like, what do they do? 350 new cards in a set?
Usually,
and
right?
Almost half of those are commanders, albeit the update for legendary vehicles being able to be your commander, I'm sure it does have some effect on that, but I would imagine a minimal effect.
Yeah, I wonder if I accidentally included some, I don't think there were any non-Final Fantasy legendary creatures in the commander decks, right? I think they were all Final Fantasy characters. So either way, there's a bajillion of them, but we are going to talk about 10 of the most popular that we think would be really fun to build, and we're going to rank them by bracket and by the power level that we would want to build them at.
Yeah, so how's that going to work? We're just going to put them, this would be kind of a tier list, but we're not actually ranking them in order 1 to 10. We're slotting them into a power bracket or a power level that we would want to play them at. And then are we ranking them within that category?
No, just
Okay.
to say, I think we've talked before about how certain commanders really lend themselves to good gameplay and a good gameplay experience at certain power levels, and now in this case certain brackets. And so I think it would be good to talk about where we think these fall if you're considering building some of these, where they might naturally fit in best.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because there are some from this set that I think look really, really cool, but I'm hesitant to build because we typically play at low bracket 3 or kind of around mid power in our power level scale. We typically play around that area, and I am hesitant to build some of these decks at that level because I feel like they would be just too oppressive, or the things you want to play with them you don't want to play at that level, so they also would just be dirty and bad.
Exactly.
I think I'm excited to talk about them.
Awesome. Well, that is exactly the discussion that we are hoping to have today. So before we jump in, I do want to review the brackets and the power levels really quickly for people who might be newer or unfamiliar with these things. So to kick it off, first of all, let's look at Wizards of the Coast brackets as they currently stand. For bracket 1, it's about bringing your ultra casual commander deck and showing off something unique, and it's all about fun, not necessarily just the winning portion. So this is a lot of very themed decks where the theme is the primary function of the deck rather than some sort of synergy.
Yeah, I forget what they termed this, but I kind of equate it with meme decks or Vorthos decks or whatever.
Yeah, exhibition, right?
Yeah. This is one that we think we think they want to drop off the scale, right? In terms of
I think it's more of a category. I mean, maybe it's a bracket. I think there's a difference between a bracket and a power level. Brackets aren't necessarily a scale, but they've kind of set it up to be a scale by numbering them. And I see this more as a category than a specific, power level.
I see that. Yeah, for sure. So bracket 2 is they coin is the average strength of modern precons. So you're supposed to expect big swings, strong engines, and flavorful cards.
Yeah, this one is named Core, and I think that they have since realized that they shouldn't be equating precons to this bracket. And so I'm very interested to see what the next iteration of this bracket is.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I think they very much regretted hitching their wagon to that because...
Yeah. Definitely. So bracket 3 is upgraded, and so this is souped up beyond the strength of an average precon with the best card for each slot. And this is where you start to see cards off of the Game Changer list. You can even see some, any amount of tutors, as long as it's not too many Game Changers. And you can even see late 2-card combos.
Yeah. Yes. I keep having to remind myself that we're not here to critique the brackets.
We already did a video about that. Yes. Go watch that one.
Yes. So with that in mind, bracket 4 is high-powered commander with explosive starts and fast-paced games where you're actually playing the best card in each slot.
And it's unrestricted by Game Changers.
Yes, right, exactly.
Totally. Yep. And then bracket 5 is CEDH. So this is a high-powered commander with a competitive metagame-focused mindset.
Yeah. So and the difference kind of being we've gotten a little bit of flack for like you'll know when you see it type stuff, but it is like a metagame thing. There are
Yeah.
commanders that people say are CDH that other people who are like pretty intense CDH players and maybe a little bit gatekeepy are like, oh, that looks like a bracket 4 deck to me or whatever.
We also
Like,
did a video about this one.
Yeah, 100%.
You should go listen to it.
Yeah, we should. Sorry, I can't talk about these without diving into them.
I love it. But what I do want to talk about next is our power levels. We talk a lot about power levels on our channel and how we've done power levels. We've done a ton of content about this. We also have a website, commanderpowerlevels.com, that you should check out. And we talk about 5 different power levels from low to low mid to mid to high. So low, mid, and high with 1 degree of separation between each of them. Low is prioritizing theme over efficiency. Generally, we're talking about precons where they may not have enough vegetables or they might have multiple sub themes and they're not super focused.
Yep. And then low mid, we kind of equate with lightly upgraded precons. So at this point, you're not adding your Rhystic Studies or Smothering Tithes or free spells or whatever,
Sure.
like any of your really busted stuff. But you are removing some of the sub themes in favor of adding more vegetables, so card advantage, interaction, and ramp. And you're focus the deck a little bit more and make it perform more consistently.
Absolutely, exactly. So mid is going to be focused on synergy. We're cutting the least efficient cards. We're generally not playing the most powerful versions of effects. So you're not playing the most powerful draw engines. You're not playing the fastest mana ramp, stuff like that. But everything's pretty focused at this point.
Yeah, this is like the next iteration of upgrading precon, right? Like the first time you upgraded precon, you replace some of the stuff with mana rocks, right? And then the next time you replace some of the even worse spells that may not have been sub themes but just weren't good with better versions of those effects, right?
Exactly.
And so then when you move to the high mid is when we start, and this is where, again, we're not doing an episode about this, but where I think the game changers are really huge because we kind of had an unspoken game changers list of things you start playing in high mid that you don't play in mid, generally speaking, with things like Mystic Studies, Smothering Tithe.
Within
But
our play
it's
group,
because-
certainly.
Yeah, and the way we I guess made a heuristic for this was a little bit of was that you're now playing like the best versions of effects, basically, right? So the best card draw effects, so your Rhystic Studies, the best ramp effects, or like mana advantage effects like Smothering Tithe. You're playing the most efficient vegetables, interaction, the most efficient card draw, most efficient ramp, and you may have some infinite combos and some narrow tutors. And then we have high power.
Yeah, and those are just the most powerful decks. I mean, you've pushed your deck to the absolute limit. It's the most powerful version of a given theme, and you need to be ready for combos and tutors and plenty of interaction. So
Yes. I do want to call out, though, that our scale stops there, and CDH is after that point.
yes,
This is
absolutely.
Yes, power level, high power this is all a casual scale. The brackets kind of are all inclusive.
Yeah.
From Vorthos decks to CDH, ours is trying to cover that middle ground of we're playing casually, and we're not quite meme decks at the bottom, and we're not quite CDH at the top.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. So our first commander that we want to talk about is a really spicy one. I think it's a great spot to kick off this discussion. It's Vivi. So Vivi is 1 blue-red for a legendary creature wizard 0/3. It has the activated ability 0, add X mana in any combination of blue and or red, where X is Vivi's power. Activate only once during your turn, or only during your turn and only once each turn. And then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is a meta. This is showing up everywhere. I mean, it's like multi-format at this point, right?
Yeah, seems good. Seems very good. It's yeah, I think I've not really seen how it affects other formats. I have seen that it Comedian MTG, shout out Comedian MTG, one of the best CDH players I think that plays currently. Won a tournament with Vivi already. I've played against Vivi several times in a CDH context, and it's very broken. I was asking you the other day, I think Vivi is very cute, and I was showing it to my wife, and I was like, oh, maybe it'd be fun to build like a Vivi deck that she might like to play, because Vivi's kind of adorable. And I was debating if I could build this at a low power or a mid power. And I think you potentially could. You just have to be very judicious about what you do, because I do think the way that Vivi really pops off, first of all, is any curiosity effect.
Yep.
right? And then
Which is
secondly,
crazy that they've done that to 2 different commanders in this set, and we're going to talk about another one later. But Curiosity with Vivi triggers 3 times every time you cast a non-creature spell, right?
yes. Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
insane. Yeah. So it does best with that and then low cost spells or free non-creature spells, right?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the cards that people are putting in deck lists for this deck. The mana curve is so low.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which is funny because, like, with Vivi, you're like, oh, you get to do big mana stuff because you get, like, this flood of mana. But that's not really what you're doing. What you're doing is using that mana to cast a bunch of small spells that are drawing you more cards so that you can keep casting more small spells, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's a deterministic line, right?
Yeah.
Where you get out curiosity, and then you hopefully can cast enough stuff to get enough mana to activate Vivi, get more mana,
do it
cast
again.
more stuff, draw more cards, get a copy of Vivi or something, and then do it again. And
So I do think, to your point, you could put a bunch of bad cards in this deck, and you could build it at a lower power level. Can I tell you why I don't think you should?
yeah, please.
It's because it has the same play pattern as Korvold, where it's like non-deterministically just like taking 1,000 game actions and just like eating up the game clock.
Yes. I agree.
Which I don't think is a great experience at lower power levels.
I think in that iteration, that version of VV, I think I agree. Like if you went the big mana cast big spells version of VV, like, so I think the problem is it does just get bigger each turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if VV doesn't get interacted with at a mid power table, the first turn you have Vivi out, and if you have some small spells potentially, you put a couple counters on, put like 2 counters on Vivi, and then you activate Vivi and you cast another spell, put a 3rd counter on Vivi. But then the next turn, you already have 3 counters on Vivi, so you can cast a couple spells, put more counters, and then you have like 5 mana again, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And so I think you're probably right. I don't know that it's exactly Korvold play pattern unless you have Curiosity. If you have Curiosity, it is for sure Korvold
Which
Treasures.
I think is the number 1 card on EDH Rec.
100%.
It's
Yeah,
in
yeah.
83% of decks.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you could restrain yourself with Vivi, then you could probably build it at mid power. I do think
Is it
lends
fun at
itself
mid
most
power?
to-
Like, is it fun at a lower power? Do you think that like the big mana Vivi is fun?
I think it depends on if you think Spellslinger is fun at a mid power, and I think my experience thus far has been that it is very hard to build Spellslinger decks
Yeah.
that are fun at mid power because you either have to interact with the Spellslinger player and shut them out, or you don't, and then they start going crazy. And so it's like, I've not had a lot of fun playing Spellslinger. I mean, I have had a lot of fun playing Spellslinger at mid power tables,
Yeah.
and have immediately decided not to play Spellslinger as much unless I put pretty strict guidelines about how I'm going to build that deck. And so that's not to say you can't.
I mean, we had the same thing like with the quick draw deck. The Stella Lee precon
yeah.
was a storm deck, right? Like in a precon shell. And I think I played the deck, I think one time. I think I've played that deck. I think I hit Storm 17.
Yeah. As a precon against non-precon decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you run into this with just about any Izzet commander. I think like Gearson Starn. I have a buddy that has a Gearson Starn deck, and it kind of does the same thing. It's kind of just like Izzet control, and then can kind of pop off if you get the right pieces out, which are all the same pieces of Stormkiln Artist and Archmage Emeritus, and all those things that are drawing you cards and making mana each time you cast a spell. And so I think it's just, I don't know. I think if you can avoid the curiosity effects, avoid the temptation of curiosity effects, I think you could play this in a way that is more fun. But it is just like a generically good commander as the face of your generic Izzet Spellslinger deck. Like you're not doing anything different with this than you are with another Izzet Spellslinger commander.
Yeah. Okay, so that all said, I think Vivi's crazy cool, and I would love to build or play a Vivi deck.
Yeah.
What bracket and power level would you recommend building Vivi at?
I think you could build Vivi at the high end of bracket 3 if you wanted, because at
Okay.
that point people are playing, stuff that can interact with Vivi, I think, meaningfully. I think that's the lowest I would play Vivi. I think Vivi is a pretty. I don't know.
I agree.
That's
I,
what
I
think,
would say
yeah.
bracket 3, high mid power.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
Okay,
I think it's
ding.
just. I think yeah.
Okay, we had the same analysis on that one. I'm interested
Yeah,
to see
I
if
mean,
this trend
yeah.
continues.
My thoughts. I just said it, but I'm gonna repeat it. I do think that if I were to try to build Vivi at a mid power, I would just pick a different commander because you're gonna play the same cards. and
There's
you're
so
just not
many
playing.
cool spellslinger commanders that like the things that make Vivi cool are those broken combos.
Yes, right,
So
exactly.
so like play the
You can play
broken
virtually
combos.
the same 99 with a different Izzet commander and
Yeah.
have a mid power deck. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. Okay. Now, do you want to read the next one?
Yeah. This next one is Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier is a legendary creature, human avatar soldier 3/3. And soldiers in all caps. I don't know enough about Final Fantasy to know why that's relevant.
I think it's
Whenever
a military program.
Oh,
I think it's like a code
okay.
name for a military program.
Okay, that makes
I
sense.
think.
Whenever it's a it's an acronym, and I don't know what
Love it.
whenever Sephiroth enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card. Good. Titan
Great.
text on a 3-mana creature. That's pretty cool. Whenever another creature dies, another creature, that's also very good. I misread that a bunch. Target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is the 4th time this ability has resolved this turn, transform Sephiroth, and he transforms into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel, which is a legendary creature, Angel Nightmare Avatar. And it's a 5/5 with flying. And he says he has Supernova, which doesn't mean anything, but it's the name of this ability. As this creature transforms into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So a Blood Artist emblem. Whenever Sephiroth attacks, you may sacrifice any number of other creatures that you control. If you do, draw that many cards.
I gave you the long one. I made you read the one that has like 8,000 lines of text.
That's okay. There's going to be more. There's going to be
Yep.
more that are long.
So
It's 2025. They're printing
they
busted creatures
all
with
look
lots of
that
text.
way. So this is like an aristocrats deck, right? Like you're wanting to make a ton of fodder that you can sacrifice. You want to be able to recur stuff out of your graveyard. This is like perfect for edict effects, right? So it's
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
a cursed marauder. I think this is like a very like grindy like
sure.
reanimate sacrifice aristocrats deck, right? Is that kind of how you see it as well?
Yeah, I think I 100% agree. Yeah, it's I remember reading this, and obviously this is much stronger than the one we were talking about. Oh man, partner with. Sorry, I'm gonna look it up really quick. Krav the Unredeemed
Oh yeah.
has a similar ability. That is its partner with Regna the Redeemed, but Krav the Unredeemed is you can pay black and sacrifice X creatures. Target player draws X cards and gains X life, and you put that many counters on Krav. So kind of like the attacking trigger on the backside of Sephiroth. What you don't have is the upside of creating an emblem that is a Blood Artist that stays for the rest of the game. And I think it's a it's obviously an Aristocrats deck. I think it seems very, very good. I really like your Aristocrats, and I think you can build Aristocrats in a way that's fair and balanced if you
Yep.
avoid some of the more egregious Aristocrats pieces.
I agree because I have played against like a slightly lower power Braids deck. Braids Arisen Nightmare, the new Braids, not the old Braids. And it honestly like wasn't as bad as it wasn't as dangerous as I worried it was going to be. Like I wasn't actually that resource constrained. It was just like crap. I have to like sacrifice a creature every turn.
Yeah.
Right? And that was hard, but you can play around it and you can just remove Braids, right? So what I'm curious about, because I've considered building this deck. This is one that I've kind of been brewing and looking at. How do you win with this deck?
Yeah, I think you eventually just win by draining people. There's a lot of infinite combos you can do, obviously, once you have
Yep.
a permanent Blood Artist that no one can interact with, which is crazy.
Then you just like loop Gravecrawler, right?
Yeah, you just loop Gravecrawler or something like that. I do think one of the ways you win is by letting Sephiroth die and having like Malakir Rebirth style effects and then transforming him again so you get more emblems,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy. But I don't know how that like actually wins you the game.
So, I mean, because this seems like it's a pretty grindy deck that wants a long game. This is, unless you're going like turbo combo, which I don't think this actually even does that well. Maybe it does, and I'm just not seeing it. But I feel like this is a pretty grindy game plan. Like anything that's playing Ophiomancer and like Bloodghast, I feel like really needs that's dealing damage for the most part, 1 damage at a time, because it's not to each opponent, it's to one target.
Yeah, sure.
Or target opponent, yeah. So it's like that's like 120 damage that you have to do, right?
Yeah,
that's a
that's
lot
true.
of damage.
I do think Aristocrats decks play more like control decks than they play like aggro decks because you're just like all you're doing is playing edict effects. Well, and here's the thing that's crazy about Sephiroth is one edict effect flips it.
Yep, one Accursed Marauder flips it.
If
and then you
has
do
a
have like a
creature
5/5 beater. Like if you can somehow curve out into like
that draws you cards, that draws you as
Yeah.
many cards as you can as creatures you have on the battlefield. So if you're playing a bunch of small creatures, you just keep going, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested because I do want to build this deck. But the one thing that I have been trying to like figure out is where does this sit bracket wise and power level wise? Because I don't want to make like looping Gravecrawler or some sort of combo like that. I don't want that to be the way this deck closes out the game. But I'm also curious to know like how a Blood Artist in the command zone would close out the game. And I think it's just like over time, enough stuff's gonna die that
because it's whenever
you're probably
a creature
gonna
dies,
deal
it's
a
not
lot of
just your
damage.
creatures, right? So if you get this emblem and someone board wipes, then that's like 12 damage or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many creatures or however many creatures on the battlefield, but I think like
So you kind of just want to fly under the radar, right? Like you kind of want to like not have people. You don't want to be an aggressor. You want your opponents to attack each other, so that over time you can just like slowly drain the table. And then at the end, you can do something to like push through those final points of damage.
Yeah, I feel like in the absence of evasion, Aristocrats decks are very unappealing to attack.
Yeah.
Because you just have little chump blockers, and then when they die, you get benefit. And so I think that's kind of your benefit in Aristocrats deck. But I do think just like in terms of power level, I think it comes down to in Sephiroth, but I think in other... I mean, okay, so I think Sephiroth is the best Aristocrats commander now to exist, probably in mono
You think
black.
so?
I think,
Even though it's not like because like Shirei lets you loop stuff really easily.
Shirei lets you loop stuff once a turn. I think Shirei is very good. Shirei puts in the deck the restriction of only wanting the 1 power creatures.
Yep.
I think Yawgmoth was another good option because it just draws you cards as soon as it hits the battlefield. But so does Sephiroth.
That's true.
And so I think like it is certainly a top contender for best Aristocrats commanders. So if in that sense it probably belongs in a higher power level maybe than some other ones. Like if you were going toe to toe with another mono black or like legend that is not particularly a good Aristocrats commander maybe. But I do think that in Aristocrats decks, it largely, in any deck really, like it largely comes down to your 99, right? So like,
Yeah.
if you can play a lot, the thing about Aristocrats that I like is that you can play a lot of the good Aristocrat stuff and have a deck that functions really well without playing the broken Aristocrat stuff. Like you don't
Agreed.
have
It's
to play,
really easy to omit Gravecrawler and Ashnod's Altar, and Phyrexian Altar, and still have it function.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can omit Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos.
Exactly.
And you're still, and like you could then play like Butcher of Malakir, which is like the fair version of those, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And the on-rate 7-mana version of those and still be fine. Like and not have this be like a super egregious deck.
Okay. So
But it'll still be very good. Like I think this is very good. I think all that to say, I think you could build this at mid power. I think at low power, you'd have to be pretty judicious about your 99. And I do think ultimately that's like where some of these end up is like depending on your 99. It depends. You know what I mean?
So you think this could be built at like bracket 2?
Yeah, I think it could. It could. I think you just
and do you think it could go as low mid power, or do you think it needs to stick mostly to like mid power?
I
Because I
think
also think it could be built bracket 2. I think you could make a bracket 2 version of this deck
I think
and
you certainly
not feel
could.
bad about it.
I think low. I Here's my problem is I don't know how to build a low mid power deck. Like, I've tried and I found myself like not being particularly good at it. So I like sticking around what we consider to be mid power and avoiding the cards that I feel like are too busted.
Yeah.
That ends up landing somewhere on like high bracket 2, low bracket 3.
Sure. And anything that's having like edict effects is like not the most casual strategy. Like it does that could feel really bad in lower power against lower power decks that aren't prepared to interact with that.
Yeah, I think if you're looping them, certainly. I do think that they're
It's like
probably.
bracket 2 mid power is where we're gonna land.
I think probably, yeah. I think depending on your 99, like this, the thing about Sephiroth is that he draws you a card when he enters or attacks, and then he flips right when all those creatures die. So like, if he's not one of the ones that died, right, he has to be on the battlefield. So like a board wipe doesn't do this. When we've talked about commanders in the past that like belong at a certain power level, I think our poster child has been Korvold, and Korvold draws you a card whenever you sacrifice anything. And so it's just like, that's just so insane and like objectively does not belong in like a bracket 2 low power level. And I think what Sephiroth is doing by itself is not particularly busted. And the 99 you build around Sephiroth is what determines.
So maybe even low mid.
Yeah, I think you could. You could. You just have to. I'm just not good at it. So someone else out there build a low mid Sephiroth.
I'm gonna leave it at mid for now, but I think you could go low mid on this and it could be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one. I'll read the next one. Choco, Seeker of Paradise. This is 1 green, white, blue for a legendary creature bird, 3/5. Whenever one or more birds you control attack, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may put one of them into your hand, then put any number of land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest into your graveyard. And then it has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, Choco gets +1/+0 until end of turn.
I don't think I ever read this all the way through. This is really good.
It's really good, huh?
Yeah, so say you have just the Birds of Paradise as your other bird. You attack with Choco and your Birds of Paradise. Look at the top two. One is a non-land and one is a land. You take the non-land, put the land onto the battlefield.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and birds go wide.
Yeah.
Like, you can make a lot of birds.
Yeah.
So you can look at a lot of cards.
Yeah, you just play this as like Murring Mystic Bant control, and you just
man,
10 billion cards.
I think this card is so good. Like I do think this is going to be like actually a pretty powerful commander. Anything that is ramping you, this ramps you not just one land, it's any number of lands among those cards.
Yeah, that's actually crazy.
If you attack with 5 creatures and you hit 2 lands, you've just ramped 2 for free and drawn a card.
So, like, ideal situation here is that you may not even ramp. You just go bird, 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 Choco, attack with 3 birds.
Yeah, because Choco doesn't have to attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really like I think you put like more than 40 lands in this deck. I think you put like 40 to 45 lands in this deck.
Yep.
And then you run all of the birds. And anything that makes birds specifically.
And a fair amount of cheap birds too. The cheap
birds.
Ones,
and I think you can run land ramp. I think land ramp's probably super good. But plus it's not just basics.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's like you get to run all of the utility lands. Yeah, I think this is actually kind of a busted commander the more you think about it. Like because they're all evasive. So you can just do it turn after turn. You're not trading off creatures very often.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah, and it's not like when they deal combat damage to a player or one or more players or whatever, and so they can all attack the same player who doesn't have a flyer. You ramp your lands.
And not to mention how many landfall triggers you're going to be getting if you're running anything that's like when a land enters, your creatures get bigger or something like that.
Right. Your Felidar retreats or whatever.
Yeah. So I was thinking that Bird Tribal could kind of be maybe our bracket 1 deck, because I don't know that we're going to get any bracket 1 decks as a conversation. But the more I read this card, I don't think this is a bracket 1 deck.
No, it would. I mean,
like, sure, you could make it a bracket 1 deck by putting only Moogles in it.
Yeah, that's what I was
'Cause
gonna
there's
say.
a
It'd have to be
Moogle in
like
the art.
it'd have to be Moogle tribal or something.
Yeah.
Or Yellowbird tribal.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this is very good. I think this is like it's funny that like we look at it, but like interaction and other stuff as like a little bit frowned upon in mid-power games if they're doing it too frequently or too well. And then ramp is just like sure,
Gets
man.
a free pass,
Like,
baby.
yeah, go
That's why I like playing
crazy.
ramp decks.
Yeah, go wild. So I think bring back balance, and I think this deck's
Yeah.
gonna be crazy.
I think it's gonna be crazy. I also think you can you don't have to put the best birds in it. Like I don't think there's anything about this deck that cares how good the birds are.
No.
So
Which
I think you could
does
build a
raise
lower
the
power
floor of
version
this
very
deck.
easily and still have it function super well.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is I do think because of that fact, it raises the floor of this deck I think, pretty significantly.
So do you
right?
think
'Cause, like,
do you think you can't build this as a low mid? Like does it just like push it to like you're getting so much resource advantage that this really should probably just be a mid power deck?
I think you could probably build this at a low mid, but you probably have to play like you can't just like weirdly, I think the mid power version of this deck looks like playing a bunch of 1 mana birds and then casting Choco and popping off, right?
Yeah, I mean, what? So to be fair, if you're playing a bunch of small birds, let's say that you're going like 1/1s, go wide, make as many bird tokens as you can. That is
Sure.
damage that you're doing, but there isn't necessarily anything that's closing out the game besides just like drawing you cards and getting you more mana. Like you do kind of have to have something on the top end
Sure.
that like can actually deal damage. Do you get what I'm
yeah,
saying?
sure.
Okay.
Sure, 100%. I was going to say, I do think the things that typically
Win
are
you the game
winning
are
games,
getting lands and
drawing cards and getting lands.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I mean, I really want to say that you could build this at a bracket 2 low mid.
I
But
think you could.
The more we talk about it, I think I think you have to be so careful and you need to really pay attention to like the amount of synergy that this inherently has.
Yeah. Yeah, weirdly, this is like this. I mean, I think this is kind of the same boat as the other ones we talked about, is you have to be like wary of the 99.
Yeah.
And
This one,
I
though, you have to
think-
be wary of the commander, right? Like, I don't know.
yeah, how the 99 is enabling the commander, I suppose.
Yeah. Versus the other way around. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. I think it's good though. I think you can build low mid. I think low mid
Okay.
mid is where I'd want to put this.
Okay.
You could probably play it in high mid, and I think you could get some pretty decent.
I think this
you
is the
could
kind of
pro-
card that the first time you look at it, there's nothing about this that like shows that it's classically powerful. Like it doesn't like want you to be playing any of the most busted stuff necessarily, but
Right.
it does a really good job at just being busted on its own.
Yeah, I think I wrote this card off as soon as I read one or more birds. Because I was like,
sure.
okay, this is like gonna suck, whatever. But if you're playing birds, it's very good.
Totally.
And there's lots of things that make birds that are like Murmuring Mystic makes birds whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, which is
pretty good.
insanity with this deck. if you're
Murmuration
playing
is an
it.
enchantment that at the beginning of your end step for each spell you've cast this turn, you create a bird.
Yep, that's also crazy.
Because you're gonna have a ton of mana, you're gonna be casting a ton of spells. You're drawing cards and making mana. So
yeah, I think that's where I'd put this one too. This one has jumped up my list in terms of being cool, and one I would.
it is cool. I opened a
Potentially
foil
consider.
one in my bundle that I opened.
Nice, that's
Pretty
huge.
sweet.
Better build a Choco deck. Add another green ramp deck with a splash of other colors.
I know my what's it called? Soul Catcher's Airy finally has a deck. The one that I opened in a list slot like 3 years ago.
Soul Catcher's Airy.
Yeah, it's a 1 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever a bird is put into your graveyard from play, you put a feather counter on it, and all birds get +1/+1 for each feather counter on it.
My gosh. Yeah, dude.
This might be the
Build
best deck
Choco.
ever for Soul Catcher's Airy. This is
Yeah,
its
that's
time to
insane.
shine.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, do you want to?
Trample?
Yeah, do you
No,
want to read
it
our next one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna make you read all of the double-faced ones.
Yeah, okay, cool. This is Kefka Court Mage. So 2 blue, black, red For a 4/5 legendary creature human wizard at Mythic, whenever Kefka enters or attacks, Titan text again, each player discards a card. Then you draw a card for each card type among cards discarded this way, and you can pay 8 generic mana. Each opponent sacrifices a permanent of their choice. Transform Kefka, activate only as a sorcery. And you have Kefka, Ruler of Ruin, a legendary creature, Avatar Wizard 5/7 with flying. And whenever an opponent loses life during your turn, you draw that many cards.
I always forget about the backside on this card. It's insane.
Yeah, the backside's pretty bonkers. Kefka seems very good.
We've already talked about how you've built a CEDH deck.
In our last episode, we talked about how I built a CDH Kefka deck that I've yet to play, but I want to. And I think it's very good. I think it's pretty solid in that context. I think discard strategies like this are really rough as you move down in brackets or power levels.
Because if you build this in casual, not CEDH, it wants to be a discard deck, right?
I mean, you could just build it as, I guess, like Grixis value, probably, but because, like, here's the thing: is
if you just if you just want to play Kefka because it's Kefka, then you could build it as Grixis value.
Well, because Kefka. So I think it depends on your philosophy of like how you're building a commander, right? Because Kefka doesn't care about discarding, right? So Kefka doesn't care about wheels, and it doesn't care about other stuff, right? But you might play some discard things with Kefka, like you will play like a Waste Not, or like. If you're a mean person like Tergrid or something.
Sure, but I do think you want to play like Displacer Kitten and Blink
so
effects.
You do eventually if you're gonna flicker Kefka. So like so Kefka will make people discard. You're not necessarily making this like a discard deck, except that Kefka does that inherently, which makes it especially mean because you don't need to put in any other discard effects besides Kefka just being on the battlefield and attacking.
And if you have something that flickers Kefka, then you're making people discard at least 2 cards a turn.
Yes, if you can attack with Kefka and then
flicker him. Because you can flicker him with his ability on the stack and he never has to like be in danger of getting blocked down and killed.
Yeah, true. And it's good. And then you refill your hand with all of the discards.
Do you feel like this like comes to a point where it is like making people resource constrained? Because I think that's one thing that's generally like a no-no in lower brackets.
Yeah, I think that's probably there was a part of me that was trying to figure out how to build this at lower power, and I think the fact that it's the resource constraint stapled to the commander, I think that makes it kind of tough. I think this falls in a similar category ish to like Grand Arbiter Augustin the Fourth.
Sure.
Where like I'm not getting anything out of it except for like additional cards, but your Grand Arbiter Augustin is my stuff costs less, your stuff costs more. Same thing with Hinata Dawn Crown.
And in this one is I have cards and you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Where like a Nekusar the Mindraiser that is like a wheels and discard deck kind of, right?
Yeah.
Is like, hey, we all have resources, you just die because of it.
Yeah.
So
I kind of feel like if you want to build a lower power Kefka, go ahead. Cool character, build Grixis value. That's awesome. If you're trying to build around Kefka, I think in general you're probably going to want to keep to like bracket 3.
Yeah, I think
higher,
so.
Right?
Or maybe even higher, depending on. I would say high bracket 3 probably.
Okay, like bracket 3, high mid, kind of like Vivi, kind of like the same place Vivi is, where it's like
Kefka,
bracket 3, but like you really don't want to be playing against like mid power bracket 3. That would feel pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's going to sound like we're saying, hey, anything as a CDH commander, you can't play at lower power levels, and that's not entirely true. Just of the sample size of 2, it seems that way, I think.
But we also generally talk about like building around commanders. Like generally when you want to build a commander, it's because you want to build around the commander. It's not like, oh, this is my Grixis commander, and then I have a pile of 99 Grixis cards.
No, 100%. But I do think like there are CDH commanders that you can build around that you can still play at lower power levels. I think Kefka and Vivi represent something similar to Korvold, where like the commander itself introduces an unfun play pattern at lower power levels, or a tough to interact with play pattern at lower power levels. and happens to perform very well at higher power levels.
Yes.
And so there's
Agreed.
like
Corvold doesn't though. Like Corvold's not a CEDH deck, right?
Corvold, because Dockside Extortionist is banned, it's no longer a CDH deck.
Gotcha. It was. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's crazy with Dockside actually.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. Okay. Well, let's talk about our next. So I think we landed. Try and aim for like bracket 3 or higher and high mid power level, very similar to Vivi for Kefka. That's interesting. I wouldn't initially, before talking about it, I don't know that I would have put it in the same ranking as Vivi, but the more we talk about it, I think that's probably where it belongs.
Yeah, I think Vivi just is straight up more powerful, but I think in terms of like, I think Kefka is more unfun at low power levels. Actually, I think weirdly Vivi has a wider range than Kefka does.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about Terra. Terra Magical Adept is 1 red-green for a 4/2 legendary creature, human, wizard, warrior. This one also has a lot of text. I need to zoom in. When Terra enters, mill 5 cards, put up to 1 enchantment card milled this way into your hand, and then she has Trance, which is an activated ability for 4 red-green tap. Exile Terra, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery, and it transforms into Esper Terra, which is a legendary enchantment creature saga wizard that is 6 power, 6 toughness, and has flying. And then it has 4 chapters. Is that right? Are they called chapters? What are they called?
Chapters. Yeah, they're called chapters.
Okay, the first 3 are create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary enchantment you control. It gains haste. If it's a saga, put up to 3 lore counters on it, sacrifice it at the beginning of your end step. And then the 4th chapter is add white, white, blue, blue, red, red, green, green, black, black, exile Esper Terra, then return it to the battlefield.
Wow. Okay, so here's my question with the lore counter stuff. If I have a saga that is on the battlefield and it's a 3 chapter saga and I put the 3 lore counters on it, it gets sacrificed.
It enters with
obviously.
1, right? When it and ETBs you get 1.
Okay, so yeah, that's okay. And so then I put 2 additional on it. Do I get each chapter as I put 1 counter, 2 counters?
You do.
That's crazy. So you just get to like sprint through a saga.
Yeah, so in Pier and Toothy, for example, I run like 1 or 2 sagas, and it's because Pier doubles the number of counters you put on anything you control. So when you put 2 counters on your saga, you get the first 2 chapters.
Interesting. That's cool. So with with the Esper Terra side, you copy a saga you control, any enchantment, but if it happens to be a saga, you just sprint through that saga. You speed read. All of them. Yeah, you don't read ahead like you do with other ones. You speed read, and then you. That's pretty cool.
So this is a 5-color enchantment commander, right?
Yes.
And I think it wants to be sagas pretty badly, right? I mean, it could just be 5-color enchantment, but like sprinting through a saga, like you said, is really good, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what this wants to be. Obviously it cares about sagas.
Yeah. I think the way a lot of people are building it is like Final Fantasy Saga Tribal.
Sure, with like the creature saga ones.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a fun way to build it, and you could also build it like enchantment creatures, like the ones that had the new mechanic from Duskmourn, impending.
The impending ones. But they don't become creatures.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true, but the ones that enter are creatures. Those ones, the copy you make are creatures because they don't have impending counters on them. They just enter as creatures.
Oh, is that true? That's funny.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be good with those too.
But I think there's lots of cool ways you could build this. That's a good point that doesn't enter as creatures. It's just, I think enchantments, I think people will probably build it kind of like Tom Bombadil. Like a Tom Bombadil that
I don't think I've played against Tom Bombadil. How powerful is Tom Bombadil?
I don't know.
Yeah. Because if you look at the play pattern of Terra, 3 mana enters, you get an enchantment card into your hand.
Yep.
Terra then does nothing until you have 6 mana and can tap her.
Sure.
So it's like let's say barring ramp, turn 3 Terra, and then turns 4 and 5 you're playing enchantment saga creature things.
Yep.
And then turn 6 Yeah, and then turn 6, you flip it and create a copy of one of those, and then you get to do that for the next couple turns. I think that's really the play pattern that it wants.
Yeah, I think that seems pretty good. I think it is susceptible to
Lots of removal.
Yeah, the thing I don't like about so power level aside, the thing I don't like about commanders like this that have an activated ability that costs tons of mana and then transforms, like requires them to transform,
Yeah.
is that
Because they get removed while that ability's on the stack.
100%,
Yeah.
100%,
Especially because the exiling portion is not part of the cost.
yeah, it turns any removal spell into a counter spell for this cool ability.
Yeah.
So like, I think
You probably want to play at lower power levels for that reason, right?
potentially, yeah, I think it could. I think this could play very well at low power levels, because there's a lot of sagas that are not like the craziest saga. A lot of enchantments that are not like the best enchantments. I do think that as you're straying away from creature stuff towards just like I think Enchantress decks feel like you could play them at low power, but they also just like dominate low power tables, I imagine.
Yeah.
And so I do think you have to be a little bit careful about that. But I think this could kind of run the gamut as far as like low to high.
I think so too. I've played against some really mean enchantment decks, and I think you could probably turn this into it, but I don't think naturally it doesn't have to be that to be fun or good.
Agreed.
Okay. So like I think like bracket 2 low mid is where this could really start.
Yeah.
Very similar to like Choco Seeker of Paradise, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could also build this at bracket 1. I think you just have to pick a theme. like,
Okay, so but if you make this bracket 1, this is my Final Fantasy Saga creature typal deck.
This is my Terra's deck, and you just play every copy of Terra or all of the Espers.
And then you play Summon Knights of Round, and you get to make 12 2/2 knights
Sure.
immediately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, those decks have to do something, right? I don't play in that area, so I don't know what's like acceptable
Seems
in
kind of
terms of
fast.
like
I don't
what
know
a deck does.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna leave it at bracket 2.
Yeah, I guess theoretically you could build any of these at bracket 1. You just have to pick something wild.
You have to have. Could you build this at low power? Like, could this be like precon level? Probably. I bet it could.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Okay. Like, so let's say bracket 2 low. Like, this is so far probably the low, because I think it has a lower floor than Choco does.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at. Is like you can build this kind of at any power level. People are building this in CDH. I think it can kind of run the whole.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. Do you want to read the next one?
Yes, this is Kuja Genome Sorcerer. I think it's Kuja. It could be pronounced Kuya or Kuha. I don't know. A 3/4 legendary creature, human mutant wizard. Tons of wizards from this set, man. It's crazy.
So many.
At the beginning of your end step, create a tapped 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent. Then, if you control 4 or more wizards, transform Kuja. So you already have 2 at your end step. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
If a wizard you control would deal damage to a permanent or player deals double that. Oh, that's so cool. Holy crap.
This is a cool commander.
This is a very cool commander. What?
Yeah, and it's like a Spellslinger burn deck.
Yeah, that's so sick.
It's pretty freaking cool, I think. Yeah, so like
this might be my budget commander. Gosh dang, that's so cool.
I think that like Rakdos Burn is a really fun archetype, and I think adding Spellslinger on top of it makes this one pretty darn sweet, because you're pretty much just playing all of the gutter snipe effects, right?
Yeah. And then you play Harmonic Prodigy, and then you get 2 wizards at your end step, and then they each deal 2 damage.
Do you want to guess how much Harmonic Prodigy is now?
I bet it's like $15.
Because of all of the wizards with activated abilities in this set.
Like $15?
Yeah.
I think I looked it up the other day and I was blown away. I should have bought one. I have one, fortunately, but
I mean, this used to be like $1 card.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's
crazy. But if you look at just the ones that we've talked about so far, it doubles Vivi, Kefka, Kuja, Terra.
Yep. And then of the ones we're going to talk about later, I think a lot of them. There's so many wizards.
It's crazy. So, okay, anyways, back to Rakdos Burn here.
Yeah, Kuja. I think so. This is not broken necessarily.
No.
So I think, and I think you could break it maybe. And so I think there is I think there's a range here. I don't know if people might fight me over this. I don't know if Kuja's something I would bring to a CDH table necessarily. I think there are much better Rakdos options. But I think in terms
I don't
of like
know
the
that there's any like big combos with this, is there?
No, it's not like a combo piece or a card advantage engine, so I don't think you're like
Yeah.
super stoked about that. But it is in Rakdos and has access to good things, and I think you could
I also love
you could build
how
this pretty
well
high
it
power.
works with just the other Final Fantasy cards. Like this works with Black Waltz number 3. It works with Black Mage's Rod. It works with Transpose. Like it works with just like all the other non-creature spells that create the 0/1 wizards.
Yeah, it's cool. This is a cool deck for sure.
I think this is tight. I think Rakdos Burn is not too OP, but it can be built to be pretty strong. But I think, like you said, it has a pretty low floor. I think you could build a bracket 2 version of this deck.
Yeah.
Probably low. I mean, this is like a Valgavoth deck. That's a precon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. I mean, firstly, I don't think they should have.
Oh, the Valgavoth one doesn't feel very good at precon tables. To be honest.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't know how like.
So would you keep this to low mid instead of low?
No, I think you build this at low for sure.
Okay.
I think like, but again, it comes down. I think the problem is all I feel like I've been saying is it comes down to what you're playing in the 99. I do think Kuja, of any of the ones we mentioned so far, has the lowest floor.
Yeah.
And the lowest ceiling.
So, it's also in Rakdos, and this is going to be a lightning rod for removal, and Rakdos doesn't have that much protection.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think this will be good. I think you could build cool, fun decks with this. I think you can also it's not doing Korvold level busted stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's gated by any like I wouldn't play this lower than X. I would just play this at whatever power level you want to build it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I like this one. This one's sweet. I kind of want to build this one. So hard when all these are so cool.
I know.
All right, I will read the next one. The next one is the Wandering Minstrel, which is green, blue, so Simic mana, for a 1/3 legendary creature human bard. Lands you control enter untapped. I'm already sold. This is already a Kelton card. And then it has the ability at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 5 or more towns, create a 2/2 elemental creature token that's all colors. And then it has the activated ability 3 and Wooburg. Other creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of towns you control. Can I tell you, I read this card, and I think you play towns because they're 2-colored lands that you get benefit from. But I honestly care that this is a 2-mana Simic commander that can play 5 colors and all lands you control enter untapped, and that's good enough for me, baby.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the floor of this is that it's an Amulet of Vigor in the command zone, which is really cool.
Pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool. But also, that's not like the most busted thing in the world. And so I think, again, the floor of this one is like you could play this at pretty low power. And let's beat the drum again. Just be wary of what you're playing in the 99 with this one at that point, because you could just play like a bunch of crazy 5-color good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so just pick your theme. Be conscious with the theme you're picking. But it is very good. Like it seems. I just lost to it in CDH the other day.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's crazy. I didn't know it was a CDH deck.
Yeah, it's a 2-mana commander that lets you play kind of weird lands that enter untapped and tap for multiple mana and stuff like that.
I mean, I honestly, it just makes me want to run like 10 scry lands and 10 bounce lands, right?
Yeah, and I think in low power, I think it's like perfectly acceptable and a fun way to play the Wandering Minstrel.
This has got to be one of the best budget landfall commanders, right? Because it lets you play like not only Simic, but like Gruul landfall, which is pretty good.
Probably. There's the Temur Omnath that's pretty good, because this doesn't give you any like payoff for landfall, but it does let you just like make more mana faster with a worse mana base. And so I think it's fun. I think there's lots of fun ways to build around it. but I think it is similar to Kuja.
I agree. I think it's a super low floor. I think it's like you can start in bracket 2 and low power and just kind of work your way up from there. Like I love how flexible this commander is. You can kind of just do absolutely anything with it.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you feel like it's kind of like in the same way as Kenrith, where it's like, yeah, it's like 5 colors and it can do stuff.
Yeah, I think
you kind
so.
of build it however you want.
Yeah, except that it like does something as soon as it hits the battlefield, and it's costs 2 mana. Like it's
the 2
it's not
mana
as good
is
as Kenrith.
crazy.
Yeah, I think it's worse than Kenrith in the sense that like it doesn't actually do anything crazy except for untap your lands.
Yeah.
But it's better than Kenrith in the sense that like you just get it out and it untaps your lands, I guess.
Okay. I like it. If you can do the what's the Modern Horizons 3 Simic Landfall Commander? Uma? Was that the name? Something like that?
Oh,
Omo. You can, if you can put like everything counters on your lands to make all of your lands towns, then that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's pretty fun. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah,
That's
I like it.
sweet.
All right. Do you want to read the next one?
Yes. This is, let me make sure I'm not jumping. Lightning Army of One, which I didn't realize was a $20 card. I feel like we talk about that too much, but I get surprised by it sometimes. It is 1 and a red and a white for a 3/2 legendary creature, human soldier, with first strike, trample, and lifelink, and the ability stagger. Whenever lightning deals combat damage to a player until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent that player controls, it deals double that damage instead. Okay, let me point out some things that I learned from watching Muldhound about this one. It's that it's when it deals combat damage to a player, it's until your next turn.
Okay.
If a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent that player controls deals double damage instead. So if your other players in your pod attack that player, their creatures do double damage. If they hit them with a lightning
not a
bolt,
source you control.
Yeah. So you just
no way.
You literally put a lightning rod on a player.
This makes it so much cooler because I think what initially I thought was so cool about this is if we think about like Storm, the commander, from Marvel.
Yeah.
I don't remember the rest of her name. I gotta try and
Storm
find
Force of Nature.
Storm Force of Nature. Yes. Storm Force of Nature. This is like a teamer commander that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn has Storm. And I like kind of the idea is that you try and stack up multiple of these so that you can give your spells multiple instances of storms, right? So you're making copies of Storm. You're trying to give Storm double strike so that you are stacking this ability multiple times. And so it's kind of like this weird like spell slinger Storm thing going on, right?
Right.
This one is trying to do the same thing where it stacks up multiple instances of this. So it's just like all extra combats and double strike. Where you're like trying to get lightning to deal damage to a player like 6 times, and then this ability stacks 6 times.
Yeah, I mean it goes crazy with extra combats for sure. Like, and
which
double
is
strike
cool.
And,
that's like a cool piece of tech that I don't think we've had before.
Yeah, no, I think it's super sick. I think it's crazy about it from like even without extra combats and without the clause of until your next turn and a source. Is that she just has first strike. So if you attack with a bunch of creatures that don't have first strike, she deals damage, and then the rest of the creatures deal double damage, which is crazy. Which is pretty crazy.
And same thing with double strike, right? Like if you can give her a double strike, then on her second round of damage, it doubles.
Yes, it would if you could do damage.
Because you get the trigger off of first strike damage, and so her second set of damage that she does is doubled.
She'll do 6 damage the next time. Yep.
It's pretty cool.
And then you'd have to cast a lightning bolt that does 12 damage because it gets doubled.
I do feel like this is the kind of commander where you have to be running a lot of stuff that supports it.
Yes, probably. I don't know. I do think
it doesn't have haste. So it's like by the time it attacks on turn 4, you probably have an unopened attack where lightning doesn't die.
Yeah.
But after that, it probably gets kind of hard to get through with lightning.
Yeah, so you equip it, I guess. You equip it, you try to give it menace. Yeah, you got to play some stuff to be able to try to get through for damage. And then you've got to play other creatures to attack. I don't know how you play this. This feels like Maulhound was pretty hot on this being like a very good Boros commander, and I think it's a very good Boros commander. And I also think that this is probably going to go in like vintage cubes and stuff to be like a very good aggro piece that has first strike, gains you life, doubles the damage you're dealing. I think it's...
I would like it so much more in vintage cube if it had haste.
I think that's probably true. I don't know.
But it's still cool.
It seems like, I mean, Othari has haste as a 3/3 flyer, but costs 5 mana.
Yeah.
And this is like...
And is really good if you have Mana Crypt.
And it's really good if you have Mana Crypt, sure.
Yeah.
But also, Lightning is really good, I think, if you don't have Mana Crypt, and even if it doesn't have haste. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not a vintage QB enough guy. I do think this is fun, though, from a commander perspective. I think this is going to be similar to Aragorn in low power, where it will just beat face.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I do think you can play it in low power, but like, so like, because the Aragorn deck, the Aragorn precon does can play pretty well with the other precons. But I've played with people who have like put barely any upgrades into an Aragorn precon, and all of a sudden it like stomps, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as soon as this one has any pieces that are helping it do the thing it wants to do, it's not going to be able to like play with other precons or play at like a lower power level because it just like pops off.
So like this could be like bracket 2, but probably like not at low power. Like it's probably like low mid start.
I think probably, yeah.
Okay. I can buy it. I'm in. All right, we have 2 more left. I will read the next one. Noctis, Prince of Lucas.
Yeah.
Lucis. It is 1 in Esper, so 1 white, blue, black for a 4/3 legendary creature, human noble. It has lifelink, and you may cast artifact spells from your graveyard by paying 3 life in addition to paying their other costs. If you cast a spell this way, that artifact enters with a finality counter on it.
Okay, here's my question for you Final Fantasy fans out there. There was a lot of lifelink spread around legendary creatures in this set, and I know part of the set was like gaining life. But is there something to do with Final Fantasy that like maybe it has to do with their weapons or something that's like
I don't know. Maybe.
Healing them or something like that? Like, I don't know. Anyway, I just was curious because there seemed to be a lot of lifelink in the set.
Yeah, like why did Lightning have lifelink?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because lifelink was like the Esper colors thing, right? That's exactly what I was thinking. Anyway, this seems cool.
I do think it seems cool. I think it seems coolest with an Ether Flux Reservoir and a Lotus Petal and something that prevents you from putting counters on things.
Yeah. I think there's lots of cool combo potential for this one. I know people are trying to make it work in CDH. I think it probably... I mean, Esper colors are just very good. But I think this one, again, like the thing it's doing on the floor, on the floor, at its floor, is not like particularly broken, right? Like it's just a cool effect. This would be one I'd be stoked to make like a low power deck out of. But but you couldn't be playing Low Spell. You'd be playing like Commander Sphere or something, right?
Yeah.
Or
so what kind of artifacts you've had a few artifact decks.
Sure, yeah.
And one I feel like that was kind of similar to this. Did you have one that you could cast artifacts from the graveyard?
I had Muldrotha at one point.
Maybe that.
And then I had a Nakiri Silas deck, but Silas had to connect to cast artifacts from
Gotcha. Okay. And Silas was mostly there for colors, if I recall, in that deck.
Yeah. And it was about artifacts, though.
And it was about artifacts.
Yeah.
What kind of artifacts are you wanting to cast from your graveyard that are worth paying 3 life and putting a finality counter on?
Any of the really good artifacts that you want that that are gone now, like a Bolus of Citadel, I guess.
Sure. So, but is it like does it kind of strictly need to be artifacts that sacrifice themselves?
Probably, except that, yeah, probably.
Because I'm looking through EDH Rec, and I'm not gonna lie, most of the cards that I'm seeing are combo pieces.
Yeah, I think people are pretty stoked about this doing combo stuff because it's lets you do stuff in your graveyard. It looks kind of like Master of Keys, but for artifacts.
Oh, okay. But I don't think it has to be that. I think this could be fun at a low power without running combos.
I think the same thing is true of Master of Keys. Like,
Okay.
Master of Keys can be broken. Escape is very, very good. You don't have to break it. You could just use Escape to cast cool enchantments from your graveyard. I think the same thing for Noctis. Like,
Spellskite is really cool in this deck.
yeah, your Spellskite dies. You cast it next turn to bring it back, and now you have another instance of Spellskite that you can use once to like make sure you don't die. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there's lots of cool stuff. I think you could. I think some of the baubles are kind of cool in this deck, like Urza's Bauble, Mishra's Bauble.
Yeah.
You just get there's zero mana draw 2, like 0 mana pay 3 life draw 2, which is kind of cool.
This could be kind of like a cool mill deck where you're like, I'm just gonna try and get stuff into my graveyard. Kind of like Emry, right?
Yeah. I think there's like lots of fun ways to do this. I think the very low power version is you just play decent artifacts and bring them back. I think the kind of mid power version is that you kind of play baubles and kind of do cool stuff, and then the high power version is that you do that, but also have a bunch of combos that you're trying to hit.
Cool.
Right?
So this one kind of also runs the gambit. Like I don't think there's any reason you couldn't build this at the floor and build just like the lowest power version of this. There's nothing inherently that's broken about this, right?
No, I think what's cool about this too is like you technically have like if you have Bolus's Citadel and trying to do the Sensei's Top combo, if your Sensei's Top has been destroyed or has gone away for something or been milled, you can cast it with a finality counter, but finality counter only cares about dying, so once you put it back on top of your library...
Is it not leave the battlefield?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Crazy. I feel like that came up in a rules conversation the other day.
The only reason I know is because I talked about it just recently with somebody, but I'll have to double check.
Yeah, I think it is if it would die.
Yeah.
If this permanent would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, exile instead. Crazy. Cool.
Yeah. Which is cool, which is sweet, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, we are on to our last one. Do you want to read our last one for us?
Yes, this is Ishtola, Knights Blessed. 1 white, blue, black for a 2/4 legendary creature cat warlock with vigilance. At the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Ishtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. Pretty cool.
This is the other one that I was alluding to that goes crazy with curiosity.
Yes. Yeah.
So you draw 3 cards every time you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater.
Yeah, for sure. Not quite Vivi crazy with curiosity because you can't just like drop 0 mana artifacts.
Yeah.
But still very good.
It's still pretty good. Especially because you could just be casting stuff like Frantic Search.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
This is I think this card's really cool. This is Spellslinger, which I love. It's Life Gain, which I love. It's Life Drain, which I love. I like that there's this weird stipulation of mana value 3 or greater. And it's got card advantage stapled to it.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's not much to gripe about with this commander. It's pretty it's an Esper.
Yeah, this is certainly one of the best commanders from the set.
Yeah.
In my opinion, in terms of like
I think is it number 1 on EDH Rec right now? Yeah, it is. It beat out Vivi. It's number 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For the past like couple weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
It seems quite good. I am a sucker for any sort of like card advantage in the command zone. And so I like it.
Yep.
I think here's the thing though, it's a precon, right? So in its current iteration, I suppose in our system it fits in like the definition of precon and can be played at power level 1. I've not seen the deck play, so I don't really know how that actually shakes out.
I have two responses to it being a precon. Number one is that
Okay.
I've heard people were sad about the actual contents of the deck.
Okay.
That they felt like it was actually like a little underpowered.
Some of it does seem underwhelming.
In the sense that like the precon deck list has some stuff where they're like, why is this in here? It doesn't really do the thing. The second thing that I will say about this precon is that I have watched games of this precon, and it kind of just always draws you cards. Like you don't even have to do that much because your opponents are also going to be attacking each other, and your opponents are also going to be attacking you. And if you lose 4 life in a turn, you still get to draw a card. So you're kind of just like at least one person at the table is kind of losing 4 life each turn. So like you kind of just draw 4 cards a turn cycle.
Yeah, that seems pretty crazy.
So
Plus,
this kind of feels like Valgavoth for me in terms of precon level, where it's like, yeah, it's a precon, but like it kind of is doing a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's like gaining your life back too on certain things too, right? Because in terms of life loss, it's not like where did your life total end up from your starting life total at the end of the turn. It's did you lose that amount of life? So like even if you're at 40, if you lose 4 life and then you gain 4 life, you have lost 4 life during the turn, so you'll draw a card. So like cards like Snuff Out that I just saw on this list
instantly
that you pay 4 life to play
for free.
For free. It deals 2 damage to each opponent, you gain 2 life, and then you draw a card at your end step.
Yeah, same thing, and it's instant speed, so you can do it on an opponent's turn to make sure you're triggering, not just on your turn. And Dismember's the same thing. I just think that there's like so little you have to do to draw 3 to 4 cards a turn cycle. With this
absolutely. It's so sneaky that you can, if someone can be like, well, we're going to try to get under Y'shtola, so I'm going to attack with only 2 power or whatever. And then you're like, okay, sweet, let me just hit you with this. Or like someone plays a fetch land and they tap their talisman and then you cast a 3 mana spell and now you're drawing a card, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like those extra, like people incidentally lose a lot of life on their turns, and the fact that you can just be like, here's 2 more, now I draw a card is pretty crazy too.
Yeah.
Makes me want to build this, man. This is cool.
It's a cool deck. I think this deck is wild. I think that like it's bracket 2, but I think it's probably like on the upper end in like a low mid power level, just because like you are going to have so much more resource advantage than everybody else.
Yeah, I think there's some cool ways to build it that are like probably lower-ish power, but yeah, it seems pretty.
Because like that's what I'm saying though, is like the precon didn't maximize this deck. Like the precon isn't built to like be as efficient in doing this thing as possible, and it still draws you 3 to 4 cards a turn cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Like you could build Esper anything, and just the fact that this is a commander is going to draw you 3 to 4 cards a turn cycle.
Yeah, and I'm just realizing that she deals damage too. So like if she gets lifelink, then you're just like dealing 2 damage to each opponent,
and that's why it triggers curiosity, is because like she's the one
insane.
dealing the damage.
Yeah, I feel like they should have. I mean, probably with Final Fantasy is the reason they didn't do that, because like they deal damage, I guess. But I feel like it would have been like saying each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Would have been a little bit of a better templating there to not make it so broken.
Yeah, this seems good. I mean, so like obviously it's a precon, but I do think it's like on the upper side of precons.
Yeah, agreed.
Just because of the resource advantage.
Agreed for sure.
Awesome. Well, these are some sweet commanders. We got 169 of them. So tell us, what commanders are you building and at what power level? Which ones didn't we talk about? We'd love to hear what you're brewing. Join our Discord. Our Discord. Is that the magic version of Discord?
Join our Kefka.
Join our Discord. Sure. There's lots of great conversations going on there. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more content. And until next time, remember to always pay the one.